can sometimes mediocre product be boosted by very good marketing?
Nothing kills a bad product faster than good marketing. There is a symbiotic relationship between the go-to-market strategy and the product. It's not this or that. It's a combination.
B2B, it's such a complex buying process, right?
Who gave this memo that B2B needs to be boring to boring? B2B needs to be as entertaining, informative, educational as B2C. The tagline of KitKat, have a break, have a KitKat, at a global level, across markets, hasn't been changed for the last almost 70 years.
Wow.
Marketers can come and go, but you cannot touch that line. That's the power of consistency. Look at brands like Coca-Cola, Nike, all of them have been built on these consistent brand properties.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with Indiefolio. Today we have Kunal Mehta with us, who's the Global Head of Marketing Communications and Brand at dsm-firmenich. We talk about Kunal's career, which spans a lot of years. It starts in India, working with some top FMCG companies, and then him shifting to KitKat's global HQ in Switzerland, and then actually shifting to B2B and doing what he's doing today. We talk about career transitions, country transitions, and discuss a lot of advice for young marketeers. Thanks a lot for your time, Kunal, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
You're one of our few guests who have recorded, outside India, and it's so exciting to see your career graph. Kunal, first question I usually ask everybody is, when did you decide that you want to get started in marketing?
I think it's difficult to answer when I realized marketing is where I want to be, but I can tell you that when I was in class 8, 9, I started enjoying the advertising breaks, the jingles, far more than the main content. In fact, I was the only one at home who would look forward to those commercial breaks. Maybe the trigger happened then. And then when I was applying in for my postgrad MBA, I chose MICA because I wanted to be in a communication school. And I can tell you that 2 years there, spending time specializing in strategic brand management, integrated marketing communication, I just loved that field, the field of advertising, building brands. And then in my career, when I started doing marketing for the CPG world, starting with Britannia first, I knew that this is the place. I mean, I was hooked. And now, 20 years down the line, I still say that this is my place. I love being in marketing. I love looking at the work that's coming from different brands across industries, across the world. So yeah, this is my true calling, I would say.
When I speak to young marketers today, they're not sure what marketing is today, right? Because conventionally, you feel it's ads, it's communication, it's working with celebrities, doing cool slogans and CTAs.
Yeah.
But then at the other end, when you see the headlines of these conferences, it's a lot about data, strategy, product. So you've spent so much time in marketing. Who is marketing really for? Is it the creative person or is it the analytical person?
So first of all, I think we need to break that bubble. I was also living in that bubble. I think marketing is as they say, a combination of art and science. It requires creativity. It requires strategy. It requires analytics. It's a combination of all of these. Most successful brands and most successful marketers are those that have been able to embrace all of these. Now, it's not necessarily that you'll enjoy all of that. There is obviously a bias or something that you will enjoy more. But if you want to be a general marketer, if you want to manage a brand in its totality, you need to start learning and knowing these things, because at the end of the day, building brands means growing a brand, looking at its P&Ls, looking at the numbers. So these are all important aspects. Creativity is just one part of it. So I always say that it's good enough when a young marketer knows this early enough that not every day is going to be just a day of creative brainstorming. There will be days when you're spending time creating strategy decks, going into analysis, thinking about strategy. So it's a lot more.
Absolutely. And what's the right way for somebody to kind of learn those aspects, right? Because everybody today is asking, so I'm a designer as well. And, today designers also expected to know more about business and engineering and product. And, you said you had a bias and you thought that you assumed it was just basically shoots and ads.
Yes.
How did you actually get those skills?
First of all, you get these skills on the job. The best training happens on the job. No book, no school can teach you as much as what the experience in-house or on the ground experience will really teach you. So that's the most important thing. The second thing is that you need to shake off your baggage as soon as you can and just become a sponge, become curious, see and observe what's happening around you. I mean, depending on where you go in your career, what roles you get, you will get exposure to many of those aspects. And now it's up to you whether you're willing to take those, invite those or not. Are you still willing to, wanting to live in your bubble and think that someday all that marketing will be is just a nice creative ad shoot? That's not going to happen. And you need to look at the marketing journeys of the marketers that you like, the brands that you like. And that's another way to kind of understand how did they reach there? What happened? And if you think you want to follow that trajectory, if you want to follow that career path, then you'll have to open up to those different dimensions, upskill yourself, learn those difficult things, get out of the comfort zone. I mean, there's no one size fits all, but I think the main thing is a marketer always has to be curious.
When you talk about an experience of a marketing, what you see on the LinkedIn or the resume, there are two kinds of focus areas I see. One is you've been in FMCG for a while, then you've shifted to B2B today. There are people who hop a lot between industries, maybe every year or two. And then there are folks who have just stuck to one industry. You also see these job descriptions, which usually mention that if I'm wanting somebody senior, I want you to come with a certain experience in this particular category. If I'm a marketer who's maybe in their third or fourth year and they're trying to dabble that, should I stick with the same category or should I move out of it, right? What are the pros and cons, and does this have anything to do with the collector, philosophy?
You've done your research well. This is mentioned in my bio on my LinkedIn. I like to call myself collector of experiences. I believe that I'm a marketer by profession, a writer by heart, and a traveler from the soul. And I think therefore this collector of experiences, because I also like to observe, let's say, societal truths and human behavior. And these dimensions have helped me in marketing, but also in terms of when I'm writing, because, writing is also all about observing, or also when I'm traveling, to just travel to different countries, to see the cultures there, how people behave in different countries. That again helps a lot. So I like to, believe that this is a reminder more to myself that if I want to be a collector of experiences, I need to be open to all these different dimensions. And to your question, I think this has helped me a lot in my career because it has allowed me to, I would say, push and do things a bit different. Even in marketing, I think I have got the opportunity to sometimes do things which have been the first for the brand or first for the category, and that's because I was like, okay, let's try it out. Also, in a global role like the one that I have today, I have team members from different countries. They come from different cultural nuances, cultural backgrounds. Again, only when you're open to see those experiences where they're coming from, you can have a better teamwork, you can have a good conversation with them. So this is what I think helps me. Now, when it comes to a young marketer who's a bit confused where to really move, I always say, don't get excited by the new shiny toy. That's where you'll make a mistake. Sit down, ask yourself, what do you like? What do you really enjoy? And most of the times the answers come from within. If you're enjoying what you're doing, and if you feel that your friend, your peer, or your colleague has gone somewhere else, and suddenly you're feeling that, oh, I'm missing out, the FOMO tends to sometimes become a problem, a fear of missing out. I think it's important that you do what you like. If you want to shift industries, you shift industries. If you're happy staying in that industry, in that company, on that brand, stay on that. That's fine. I mean, I have moved it across industries, across categories, across countries, but I've also been happy in companies that I've been. I've spent a lot of time in many companies, and I've enjoyed those stints as well. So it's all about how you feel at a certain point in time in your life.
You mentioned, I believe you worked Arvind or Britannia, both of these large CPG brands. One of them was, I think, your first gig, right? So what was going in your mind when you picked the first job, and how do you really impress such large brands to actually bet on you when you're young?
The honest answer of this is that when you're in a B school, you are just trying to figure out which are the companies that are coming on the placement days, and which are those companies that you're interested in, and you start applying to those companies. And as you would know that in most B schools, if you sit for an interview and if you crack that interview, if you get that offer, even if the next company is another company or your dream company, but if you got an offer, you have to take that offer. So I don't think that there is much of a choice then, except being sure what kind of industry or what kind of companies you want to apply for. But that doesn't mean that the first job is the make it or break it. I don't agree on that. I think that is when you start getting exposed to the corporate world. You're just seeing the world out there, the industry out there. But there are enough and more opportunities. A few years down the line, you can always shift your careers, shift industries, change countries, categories, all of that is possible. So let me say this to your audience that first job being a make or break is the biggest myth. No, that's not true. It's a great learning ground. So by all means, put your dedication, your determination on that job, learn from that. But that's not where you necessarily get stuck. You can always change your trajectory. That's not a problem.
Good Day, KitKat, Munch are just some brands, I clearly remember you've worked on. These are like legacy brands. Even today, with whichever team's handling them today also, they're so relevant and fresh. When you ask me and my team, like we get fatigued coming up with new ideas even for like IndieFolio, and we are like such a small company compared to these big brands. You get really fatigued, trying to be fresh and new. And I can only imagine that for such legacy brands, an idea must have been done somewhere already in some way, right? So how do you really keep on thinking of new things and how do you really stay relevant?
First of all, I must say that I'm grateful that I got the chance and the opportunity to work on these brands. So when you get these brands come with a bit of stress on your shoulders that will you be able to live up to the expectations of what the brand has? But I think as soon as you let that go out of your mind, you have to be mindful of two things. One is that what are the fundamentals of the brand that led the brand to where it has reached today? Ensure that you protect those fundamentals at core very strongly. Marketers tend to come and want to change everything, but I always say that be sure what is it that you're changing. If the core and the fundamentals of the brand has led the brand to years of success, don't mess around with that. And then try and figure out what are the other things that you can play around with. And this is where you need to be open to what's happening around you. Listen to your consumers, ask questions to your customers and consumers, see what's happening in the macro environment. Trends are changing. What's coming in? And this is where things like, in all these three brands that you mentioned, things like product formats, packaging formats, SKUs, price points, flavors, all of this, that's a wide playground. It's an open canvas. Do what you want. Stay true to the core of the brand. You can then be very relevant because as the audience taste evolves, you can be relevant to them as long as you know that what the brand stands for. And then you try and experiment with all these things.
I often see that sometimes when there are young marketeers or new marketeers joining a company, there are some discrepancies in what even they feel the brand stands for, right? Now, if I'm a marketer who's just joined a company with a large legacy, it's pretty difficult to really understand the core values. So any thumb rules you follow or best practices you have to really absorb and understand what a brand or a product really stands for.
When someone goes on a big brand like that, there is this energy and enthusiasm to wanting to contribute. The question is, how do you contribute? Is contribution all about saying things without understanding the brand? Or is contribution all about spending some time listening to the brand, listening to the work, going deeper into the work that's been done, looking at the creatives that have been done? What were the times when the brand was successful? So I always say spend some time asking those questions from people who worked on the brands, looking at those creatives, maybe also spending time with consumers. Why do they even buy that brand? What is their affinity to that brand? And then you start forming your opinions, and then you start, joining the dots, and then you become a better marketer. And then people cannot challenge you because now you've got these dimensions from all these elements who have, in a way, made the brand part of their lives.
This is such good advice even for agency owners, because even when we are trying to kind of get a new brand impressed. I want to now talk about competition. I would like to kind of get some insights from you which can help a startup today, right? You see so many D2C brands today trying to challenge big groups, right? Everything from a toothpaste to a cream is being launched by small companies today. Companies like the Minimalist who've grown exponentially and had a great exit very, very fast. So how do you tackle competition, when at different scales, right? If you can give an example on what would be your strategies to be different at scale, maybe while being in Nestle or Britannia, and what have you learned which could probably help a startup today when they're doing 0 to 1 to also be different?
First of all, competition is good. Competition is not bad. Competition keeps you sharp. Competition keeps you agile. And depends on how do you look at competition. Some of the, let's say, similar size, similar kind of competitors, they will not only keep you sharp, but they can also teach you a lot. When it comes to the small competitors, sometimes it's about wait and watch, see what they're doing. Some of them get it right. Some of them you can already see that they're not getting it right. They spend a lot of time, let's say, trying to get the product right, but not all the other elements. The assumption should be that this will become a success, and it will become a success first within the country and then beyond the country. And this will allow them to then start thinking of what are the roadblocks that they would see in the next 2 to 5 years, and they can already resolve that. I mean, I also sometimes discuss and I sit on a couple of jury roles on certain startup competitions, and I see that most of these companies, there are people who have understood a problem. They know they're trying to solve a problem. But the last thing on their mind is to think about the branding, the marketing. They never have a marketing person in that board or in that set of people who are doing the launch. And this then comes to bite them at a later stage. So I think there are all these things that startup companies need to be mindful of. What they see is the size of the pie, but what they don't see is there are a lot of elements that you need to be mindful of to get that size of the pie.
You did a few innovations and renovations. Could you give some examples of what you did? Like, what was the insight? What made you make that product and how that fared for the company?
There are two that are coming to my mind. One is an India example and one is a global example. So then it also gives a good perspective. So when I was in India, we launched a special KitKat called KitKat Duo, which on the two fingers of KitKat, one was coffee and one was a white chocolate. So it was an interesting, exciting thing that was being done in the Indian market. Now we could have gone ahead and done regular advertising, but we thought that how do we really talk about this in a very smart, quirky, interesting way? And this goes back to being collector of experiences. How do you try something new? This was also the time when the movie Key and Ka was coming out. This was a movie where Arjun Kapoor and Kareena Kapoor were starring, and they were the two characters, Key and Ka. And when we got to know about this movie and we heard the title, we thought that the letters Key and Ka are so similar to the letters of Kit and Kat. And also there are two characters who are very different, diverse personalities. We thought this is perfect for us when we want to talk about KitKat Duo. So we actually did an in-film placement. We got both of them to talk about KitKat Duo, consume KitKat Duo. So it was a great way for them to promote the film and KitKat Duo, and vice versa. So this is one example of doing an innovation, but also then advertising about that in a different way. At a global level, the one that I'm really proud of and the one that was done at a massive scale was KitKat Ruby. Now, for your audience who may not know what Ruby is, I should first say that in the world of chocolates, there have only been three kinds of chocolates. Whatever chocolate you consume, there are only three kinds of chocolates as a base: milk chocolate, white chocolate, dark chocolate. Everything else is either flavors or inclusions or all those kinds of things. Ruby was a breakthrough innovation because it was the fourth chocolate coming in this world. It was all naturally occurring from the cocoa beans, a red color, a berry note, very unique. And the idea of Ruby was actually presented to us by one of the big global cocoa suppliers, Barry Callebaut, who we buy cocoa from. They came to us with the idea. They were working on these beans for almost a decade. They had developed the idea, the concept, and they pitched it to us. And I remember when they came to us, they thought that we'll take this idea in one of our premium chocolate brands in Nestle. But when we heard this idea, we thought that if there's one brand that can give it scale and take it to all the markets, it's KitKat. So we kind of told them that, we want to take this on KitKat. And they understood the logic. And that's when we said that we need to launch KitKat Ruby. This meant that we needed to kind of identify which are the markets where we'll do launch at the same time. In fact, I remember this was one of the unique launches where we launched simultaneously in almost 20 markets in Asia and Europe. Japan and Korea were the first markets to take this launch. And then in Europe, we had markets like UK and a few other European countries doing the launch. That meant getting the packaging and the positioning right in a way that it works across countries, across cultures. That meant that allocating the inventory in terms of how much will go in each of these countries in the right way. You don't want to miss out on an opportunity, and you also want to ensure that stocks are at the right place. Mm-hmm. That meant stakeholder management, supply chain, logistics. It was a great learning ground, but also it was something that I was proud of. And I think, a brand like KitKat is not one person's job. Many people involved, both at the global side as well as in the countries. But it was a huge success. We got huge media coverage of this because also the media was excited with the fourth kind of chocolate. So I think this one, is a nice one that I always talk about when I talk about KitKat innovations.
These are some great examples of the
Sure.
depth you need to get into as a marketer, which is product, go to market, and the communication part of it. Of course, people say that without a product, you're not going to go anywhere, and people say that without the go to market and distribution, you're not gonna be able to go to people in the first place, and nobody will know
Yeah.
that the product is good enough.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who's kind of worn both hats, right? Like, do you feel that a product remains to be the number one thing, or can sometimes mediocre product be boosted by very good marketing?
Nothing kills a bad product faster than good marketing. Okay. Nothing kills a bad product faster than good marketing. There is a symbiotic relationship between the go-to-market strategy, the go-to-market approach, and the product. It's not this or that. It's a combination. However, getting the product right or getting the product, and that's why, in the startup world, you hear about the MVP or minimal viable product. So I think it's important even in these kind of categories, you need to have a product that meets the customer expectation, what they're expecting, what they want. Only then everything else helps. You can do all the best kind of advertising, best kind of communication, all of that. But if the product doesn't hit the customer on the minimum expectations that they have, then it's not going to be a success. And then that's the reason that across industries, we see so many product launches that happen, which also die a slow death or a fast death, depending on what kind of industry it is. But that's simply because the product didn't meet or live up to the customer's expectation. The product is the core and the fundamental before everything else happens, I would say.
As a startup, we really try to be flat, and have everybody kind of come in and chime ideas. But I do have people and my friends in very large companies where literally the way you speak is, my three up, five up, my senior is saying
Mhm.
this, saying that, and it's really hierarchical. So if any marketing leaders hearing this, to actually break that hierarchy in India, right? Do you feel that there is something they are following which we are not, or is there something in their culture which maybe we can learn from?
So look, I think every culture and every country comes with its own pros and cons. There's things that are beautiful about Indian culture, and we need to also retain that. It's not that we follow a particular culture. So I think that's the starting point. Things are changing both from the young marketers, but also the experienced marketers, where they realize that the young marketers of today have knowledge and awareness of things that they do not have awareness of. And there's a concept called reverse mentoring, which is encouraged in many companies. My advice is that formally or informally, experienced marketers should open up that dimension, because the young marketers can teach you a lot of things that allows that those invisible shackles of hierarchy to break. Because in a way, there is a lot about technology or other things that maybe a young marketer can tell you about. The reverse mentoring allows uh, relationships to get stronger, but also mutual respect to develop, and both the mentor and the mentee. In this case, the senior person becomes the mentee, so the mentee can learn from the mentor and vice versa. I think that's one thing that comes to my mind.
I fully agree. I think even right now in this podcast, I've spoken to so many marketers who today say that I'm approving things I don't understand at all. But I think sometimes you have to do it, because I'm like,
Yeah,
what is this Gen Z lingo? And, Swiggy
yeah,
had a really, popular reel by one of their marketing leaders who said something very similar, because they had
hmm,
done like a meme collaboration of many
right,
people. And he's like, I have no clue what I saw. And they want a lot of money, but like, ठीक है, I'll trust you, and it did
yeah,
really well. So you have to really kind of allow young folks to kind of put their ideas, because you're communicating to the younger folks at the end of the day. So
absolutely,
I love that
absolutely.
as well. I don't know what's the opinion around B2B globally, but in India it's generally like dry. I wouldn't
Hmm.
imagine somebody being behind KitKat and so many other brands like Britannia and Nestle do
Right,
something like B2B, because it may be dry, it may be
hmm,
boring, it may be very
right,
sales heavy, right? And that's why, like, that's the notion people have. So could you
yeah.
tell me how you made the jump into B2B, what
Yeah.
excited you about B2B, and generally why you picked DSM?
It's a very relevant question. And this is a question I ask myself as well. That spending 13 years in CPG, why would I do that? Three learnings that I carried from the CPG world, which I believe can help in B2B marketing, and sort of it becomes kind of a playbook for me, at least. First of all, emotion or emotional storytelling is an important part. And that's why the CPG brands have succeeded over the years. The B2B marketers tend to think that the B2B customers and audience is only interested in the functional or the technical aspect. Yes, they are. But at the end of the day, they are the same human beings who are consuming the media and the content on all the touch points that a B2C consumer is at. So it's important to bring the emotional aspect into this. And when we talk about emotion, sometimes also there is another, let's say, policy or myth that humor is not something that should be brought in B2B communication. And I say that humor is a great element of emotion that if you think your brand in B2B allows, your tone of voice allows it, please use humor. At the end of the day, who doesn't want to laugh? And who gave this memo that B2B needs to be boring to boring? B2B needs to be as entertaining, informative, educational as B2C. So I think that's one dimension that I kind of brought in, which is all about emotion. The second thing is consistency. This is another piece that I saw sort of missing in general in B2B. And I can say that in dsm-firmenich, that's not the case. And over the years, we fixed it. We've kind of taken care of that. But legacy brands, you take KitKat as an example. We spoke a lot about KitKat, but one thing, the tagline of KitKat, have a break, have a KitKat, at a global level, across markets, hasn't been changed for the last almost 70 years.
Wow.
Marketers can come and go, but you cannot touch or change that line. And that's the reason that today when we tell people, consumers, the first line, have a break, they are able to say the second line on their own. That's the power of consistency. Look at brands like Coca-Cola, Nike, all of them have been built on these consistent brand properties. So I think consistency is the other element that needs to go into the playbook when you're doing B2B marketing. And the third element is tone of voice. Tone of voice is an important aspect. I always say that if you're doing B2B marketing, take some time and put down your tone of voice clearly, your style, persona, emotion, your purpose, and make sure that the tone of voice then comes alive on every touch point in every piece of communication. Once you do this, B2B marketing doesn't need to be dry. I don't feel that B2B marketing that we do is dry. I think it's quite entertaining, quite interesting, quite educational. And this is the shift that I hope happens across B2B marketing, across industries.
Incredible. I also am in the B2B space, when I'm selling to other brands, right?
Mhm.
As a creative setup. Emotional storytelling works very well when you want to make an impulsive purchase. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I think it's cool. I think I should do it. In B2B, it's such a complex buying process, right? And
Yes.
I think where you're at, I think it's one of the most complex processes I must be thinking of. Very long contracts, very large contracts. While emotional storytelling kind of works to build, let's say, a narrative or a brand, the
Mhm.
conversion, in marketing would be very sales driven. No, so how does brand and marketing actually influence those
Yeah.
conversions if in B2B?
The answer is in your point itself. Because it's a long buying cycle, the person is not taking a decision today. So it's not that, oh, they saw an ad, they saw a promotion, I'm going to make a purchase. You need to build that emotional connection over a period of time. And therefore, I say that actually it is far more important in building those emotional connections through the communication work, the marketing work that we do, so that when the salesperson is having the conversation, it's so much easier to close the sale, to do the conversion. So I think it is far more important to build those emotional connections when the decision maker is trying to making a purchase. They might be deciding to purchase a product of ours 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, and if you've not done the work of that emotional connection over the last 6 months, you're not in that consideration step. That's gone.
For a company at your scale, right, doing B2B marketing, what's
Mhm.
really the B2B marketing or the digital marketing stack? And if you could kind of tell me how you've built the B2B marketing stack at your company.
I think we also follow a very omni-channel approach. Just maybe we should start by explaining how my team setup is, because that will also explain how this works. So in my team, I have media marketing, digital marketing, event marketing, brand marketing, campaign management, and graphic design. So, and all of these teams work in collaboration together every time when we're doing a campaign, every time when we're doing a product launch. So imagine there's a product launch that's happening. The product launch will get launched at an event. So the event marketing team then works out what's going to happen before the event, during the event, after the event. The digital marketing team is then taking content, creating content around that will go during the event. That's happening on social media platforms at that time. The brand marketing team is ensuring that the visuals, the elements of what's going to be shown both at the event as well as on the digital front is all in line with the brand, is all helping to build the brand. The graphic design team, of course, creating it. So they are the ones who are executing those elements of what needs to go. So as you can see, all of these different elements are playing together. So these are different pillars that we have. And within that, we have many different tools and platforms that we work with. You have to be on the top of your game. And this is part of the being aware of what's happening out there, but also part of the conversation that we have in terms of learning and development. What are the new things? I mean, 2 years back, we were not talking about AI, but now my digital marketing team has to understand the different dimensions of AI. We use AI a lot in terms of both augmentation and automation. So how do we do that? Which are the best tools to do that? So all these elements are what we bring into when we do marketing in this company.
There's a huge debate also about how do we create a balance between in-house and outsourcing. Some of the top companies in the S&P 500 now are making their own studios in-house. Even I'm
Hmm.
seeing that happen in India, where more and more brands have this in-house team.
Yeah.
So, what generally do you feel marketers should do it in-house, and what do you think they usually should do in terms of outsourcing?
So I can talk about what we do. A combination of both actually helps us, I believe, helps us stay agile, helps us stay cost effective, and of course, customer centric. We like to work with the external agencies when we're designing, let's say, doing the strategic part of it, the strategic concept, the campaign idea. Those are the kind of things that we kind of digital activation in terms of working with, let's say, Google or LinkedIn. So this is where we work with the external agencies. But then we also like to do in-house when things need to be, let's say, repurposing an asset. So we have a creative concept that comes from the main agency. How do you repurpose it across different collaterals? We work, we're a global company, so we work across multiple geographies. How do you do the translations and then redo the assets? It could be resizing, it could be creating it in different formats. So a lot of those things then we do in-house. So I think it's a combination of both. I believe that companies should definitely keep a combination of both because either of the two can be a bit tricky. They just going with external agencies can slow you down and can become an expensive affair. If you just stay in-house, you kind of lose the opportunity of getting best practices from what the agencies are seeing with other clients and other
Right.
industries. So I think a combination is what is really helpful.
You've worked with so many agencies, right, in your career. What
Mhm.
do you think separates a great agency from a good agency?
I would say that a bad agency, not a great or a good, a bad agency is an agency that does everything that you ask them to do. And this might be surprising to some of the audience members, but there is a reason I say that. A bad agency will not help you grow. A bad agency will just do what you ask them to do. A great agency will see themselves as your business partner. They will challenge you on your brief. They will challenge the status quo. They will spend time with you learning the business and they will push you just with the intent of making the brand and the business better. So I always like to work with agencies that come with strategic mindset, but also a challenging mindset. I think a combination of these two is what in my career I've seen has helped. And those are the agencies that I've enjoyed working with. Those agency folks are now great friends of mine. Over the years, I've worked with them and they're now friends of mine because they helped me grow, they helped the brand grow. And I think that's how I would look at a great agency versus, let's say, a bad agency.
You mentioned AI some time ago, and if you ask me, and if I try to think a little bit 5, 10 years in the future, what I'm seeing is that the creative thought is important, but the production is going to get agentic and generative, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
what that means to me is if you have the brief and if you know what you need to do, you'll get it created through AI, which is a little bit
Hmm.
scary because there are so many people today, and I'm a network of creative agencies who are actually doing creative production. I wonder in the future if the marketeer would be expected to know Gen AI so they can actually
Yeah.
create the end asset as well. Do you feel that's where the world will go, or do you think that there's a way creative people can still be relevant?
I always say that there are two kinds of people in the marketing world. There are people who are thinking, fearing that AI will come and take over their jobs. And there are people who are waiting and already exploring AI and trying to see how can AI help them do their jobs better. And that means when they say do the jobs better, it's all about the mundane, the boring, the regular. How can AI help you to do that so that you can spend time improving your productivity, spending time thinking of the forward looking, the strategic things, the future looking things. So I think that's the first thing that people need to embrace in terms of a mindset that AI is your companion. AI is going to help you. AI is not going to replace you. And if you learn how to use AI to the best of your abilities, then it's going to do wonders for your company, your brand, and your own career. And if that means that if AI can help in creating certain pieces of content, which is taking hours today, doesn't matter because then you are spending time in thinking about what are the elements of the brand that you want to open up that you were not able to open up because you were, struggling on time. You didn't have the resources. So I think AI is just one more agency in your toolkit that you can use the way you want to use.
A lot of notes, feedback, and I think best practices for marketers, agency owners, and even founders, I'd say. So thank you so much for that. As a parting thought, I have a last question. If if
Mhm.
if a young marketer is hearing you today and they want to be a CMO one day, they want to be a marketing leader one day. What's your advice to them? Like, what should they do in their career to have a
Yeah.
successful career and become a marketing leader?
It is very easy for a young marketer to enter the corporate world today and get overwhelmed with the plethora of choices, the different touch points, the pace of the technological evolution, and this fear of missing out or FOMO. I always say that channels, platforms, technology will keep on evolving. What is hot today will not necessarily be hot tomorrow. As long as a marketer spends time understanding the fundamentals of marketing, and what that means is that know your customers deeply, understand your brand's value proposition and its strategy. Make sure that your strategy is tight and your execution elements is top class. Spend time in the data, in the reporting, in the metrics. Measure and know what's working, what's not. As long as young marketers embrace these fundamentals of marketing, I think not only will they thrive, but they will also keep the world of marketing really beautiful, magical, and trustworthy. If a marketer is going into a global career, they need to remember that as long as they are, let's say, culturally appropriate or culturally informed, socially appropriate, and in accordance with the norms and cultures of that country, then also they will be able to thrive. They'll not go wrong. So I think these are the two elements. As long as they keep that in mind, it's a great world, the world of marketing.
That's some golden advice, Kunal. Thank you so much. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Your questions were insightful, and it also helped me go down my career journey over the last 2 decades. So thank you for that.
It was a pleasure, Kunal, and thank you so much for coming on board. For everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much for joining. We'll have another marketing leader come very, very soon. So if you'd like to catch the episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.